Hello and welcome. This video is going to be about breath of fire or skull shining breath. This is a breath that is used to really fire up the midsection, the solar plexus part of the body that really gets you engaged in life. It's a pretty intense breath, so really take it into pieces and parts and maybe build on it as you go. Okay, it creates that fire. And then it hopefully lets the crown of the body, the skull, right? This kind of feeling along the skull that feels like a circular pattern, light up. Okay, so it's kind of twofold in this patterning that goes up the spine. So the way that it's done is you would think about the way a dog pants, that kind of that motion with the breath, or the way a choo-choo train goes through, that chugga, 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 chugga type feeling with the breath. So we're going to take it in stages. Because normally we do breathing where we focus more on the inhalation, this breath, we focus more on the exhalation. So the exhalation is forced in, where we pull the belly in. As you force that, the inhalation just happens. The inhalation just comes on its own because you've released the belly. So it's quite different than us always focusing on the inhalation breath. And I think that's why this breath can be really challenging for people, because this focuses a little differently than what we're used to, especially in yoga, if you have a yoga practice, okay? So the way we'll look at it is, can you, when you exhale, forcefully push the belly straight in? So a lot of times what happens is when people do this breath, they sort of get really upper chested, this is what's lifting with the breath versus the belly pushing back. This is very toning also for that whole midsection, because the abdominal muscles have to be able to do that little bit of contraction to pull in. If you think about atmospheric pressure, the diaphragm that lays underneath the ribs and the lungs is at the top dome. And then at the base of that is your pelvic floor. And then all the contents between that are your organs. Okay. So when we forcefully push in, this is changing and shifting the pressure that is within this core canister of your body. Okay. So let's look at it in a way that we'll just practice. Can you exhale out of your nose and push that belly back? Can that happen? So let's practice that just a couple times. The exhale through the nose. Okay, very forcefully pushing back towards the spine. We'll do it again. Just that push back on the spine. Sometimes having your hands on your belly, you can kind of help assist, or at least feel that the belly is doing the work versus this upper body. If throughout life we use a lot of accessory muscles in breathing, meaning our neck and our shoulders are helping us breathe all the time, it's going to be really hard to disassociate and get that breath quite lower. Okay, so breath of fire, this really forced breath, Kapalabhati is what it's called in Sanskrit as well, is this forced breath in. Okay, so what's cool about it is once you have it established, you could kind of do it anywhere. You could be in your car, you could be on a bus, you could be on a plane, and you could be doing this breath. So it's eventually going to have this rhythm of pushing in and out. We want to ensure that the breath doesn't peak up and valley down dramatically. We want to try to keep an even layer and an even flow with that breath. And what that means is you may just have to do it for less and not pushing through, lots of time. So I want to use this as a tool for you to figure out a way that has the best breath for you. Okay, so let's start where maybe we do 5 breaths of this, or 5 of these pumps, okay, with the breath. I do want to caution that if you have a lot of anxiety in your life, maybe you don't feel as balanced as you would like, and you'll know this for you directly, then maybe just take a step back and don't add this breath just yet, or practice where it's maybe just 5 or just getting that pumping. These breaths were intended when they were made in yoga many, many years ago, or at least rediscovered and put back out there. They were made with the assumption that we were pretty balanced, especially when you're practicing the breathing aspects. Any of this pranayama, this breath where we're directing it and changing it, this is when we want to make sure that we're slightly more balanced than normal. So maybe on a day that you don't feel balanced, maybe not add this breath, because it's engaging, it's charging up, it's exhilarating the nervous system. It's putting that sympathetic state on the nervous system, that action state, a little bit higher. So if you're already too high in that state and you don't know how to drop into a parasympathetic state, this rest, this relaxing piece, then, maybe give yourself a little break. Okay. So just want to preface with that. Nothing that I'm going to give you is going to be so dangerous that it's going to be detrimental, but it's something to note. It's something to pay attention to in your own body. Okay. So let's practice maybe 5 breaths in and out pumping. So the way this would look is you take a breath in and then we start. And that's it. Breathe in, breathe out. And it's just good to observe. How do you feel? How did that go? If it was no issue, if you feel great, continue on. Otherwise, take a little rest, come back to this tomorrow. Okay. Let's try a little bit longer where maybe we do 25 breaths. Okay, so the tongue extends down into your throat and where your glottis is. So when you do these type of breaths, it's almost like your tongue is pressing against the back of the throat and it's closing off. It's a little bit of this closing off. What's cool about this is you can direct the breath wherever you like. So in this case, we're directing it quite low into this base to force pressure up into the diaphragm and into the rib cage, okay? So that the inhale just happens on its own. That dropping down of the inhalation just happens on its own, okay? So let's go for 25. So you're gonna sit in a comfortable seat. This could be in a chair. I just happen to be on the floor. And we're gonna do that pumping. And the pumping is what you're practicing, okay? Because once you get the level of the pump, then you can increase that speed much quicker, okay? So here we go. When you feel ready, you're gonna breathe in. And then you begin. Breathe in. All the way out. And you just sit in that. You sit in what you've created. You sit in the energy of that, what you've churned in the body, and then you just observe and you assess. So there's multiple ways to do this. I mean, you could just do 1 round and be done. You could do 3 rounds. You could do 3 rounds and maybe start slow and then increase the speed as you go between the rounds, okay? This is really, it's not nasal. It's not, so sometimes people all through the nose, it's really low in the belly. Think about, you have your pelvic floor, your breathing muscles are the upper diaphragm and lower diaphragm. And these two sit and they wait for breath. They wait for breath to help move them. So like every other muscle in the body, these are looking to have that little bit of force. So really think about what you're doing and how you're doing it. And nasal breathing is fine, but we're getting really deep into the lungs, those really base layers of the lungs and how those that diaphragm affects the pelvic floor. And with this force of the belly in, it's really going to make that pelvic floor have the same actions as the top. Okay. So the pressure is accepted into both. All right. So let's try it again. 25 breaths. So we have that time in between to kind of settle, let our nervous system settle, and then we're going to go right back into it. So when you feel ready, we breathe in and then we begin. Breathe in. All the way out. And then we sit and we settle and we assess again. Now, as women, this whole midsection could feel very disassociative. It could really feel like there's just not a connection to what needs to happen there, especially the push back into this lumbar spine, this lower back. Same thing. It's probably a blind spot, an area that may have had trauma. You have childbirth, you have possible sexual trauma, you have these traumas that could possibly happen in this midsection. So getting that connection there can feel impossible sometimes. So that's why maybe getting empowered in this section, feeling it again, getting that association, getting that mapping is going to help longer term. Okay, so now let's do 25 breaths again, and we're just going to increase the speed a bit and just see how that feels for you. All right. So when you're ready, we breathe in. And then we begin. Breathe in. And all the way out. Very nice. So over time, when you do this, you could, once you have that down, just look at your third eye. So behind the closed eyes, your focus is there, you're counting and you're pumping the breath. And this gives the mind and the physical body and what you're doing all mesh, right? You're in the moment, you're in the zone of what's going on. And then because that breath makes you get that kind of feeling of, it's not dizziness, but it's this rising up type feeling, eventually you start to feel that. And when you're done, you can kind of sit in what that feels like. Okay. So just to recap, it's a pump in on the exhalation. The inhalation just happens on its own. We work up to a certain amount. So once you have that 25 down, maybe you do 3 rounds, then maybe you start to build up to time, where you time yourself 1 or 2 minutes of that. Okay. But again, once it starts to get erratic, you would pause, you would stop, and you wouldn't continue on. Okay. So please drop comments if you have any questions or things just aren't working out for you. This is a very difficult breath, I know. So really finding that time to practice it. So let's try and just do maybe 3 rounds where we all do it together. Okay, so that way, if you're coming to this every day, you can just come to this part. All right, we'll breathe in together. And then we begin 25 slower. Breathing in. Hold it just for a moment. Breathing all the way out as long as you can go. Sitting for a moment in that, Now, maybe this time you look at the third eye behind the closed eyes as you're doing this. So it's just a gentle gaze. So when you're ready, we breathe in together, 25 again, slower. Breathing in. Hold it for a moment. Breathing all the way out. We sit in what that felt like for a moment. This last round, we're going to do 25 again. This time we're going to go just that little bit faster, okay? So when you feel ready, we breathe in together. And then we begin. Breathing in. Hold the breath in. Breathing all the way out. So we take that time to observe. Good. So that could be done in the morning. It could be done at night. It could even be done in the middle of the day, really. But maybe just once a day to start, and you can always increase the count to maybe 30 or 40 and then times. All right? Mwah. Good job.